Over the past couple weeks, my family did a marathon where we watched 18 different movies starring Nicolas Cage. Now, there are a few rated R movies on this list, and some of these we had to fast forward through certain parts. So, me including a certain movie on this list is not necessarily endorsement of its content. Also, these movies aren't necessarily judged by their quality, but rather a mixture of the quality of the film and Nick Cage's performance. There are some movies on here that are objectively better, that have lower spots, simply because I think Nick Cage was better in one of the movies higher up on the list. With that in mind, let's get started. In last place at number 18 is Peggy Sue Got Married. Now, there could be some interesting ideas here by having the story be a mix of Freaky Friday and Back to the Future, but when you think more about this movie, it's incredibly problematic because the main character is a 30-something-year-old woman who goes back to high school and starts dating someone who is a high school age. Ugh. The film is also just kind of boring, and I wasn't that invested in it. As for Nick Cage's performance, it gets really annoying really quickly, and the only reason he's in this movie is because of nepotism. The director of this movie is Francis Ford Coppola, and Nick Cage is his nephew. Terrible story, annoying Nick Cage performance. Let's move on. Number 17, GeForce. This is one of those movies I enjoyed as a kid, but watching it 15 years later, I see a lot more issues with it. The idea of secret agent animals has been done in the movie Cats and Dogs and Phineas and Ferb, but it's still pretty cool. But the dialogue, the jokes, and the plot are all pretty basic. It has a good twist on who the villain is, but the movie is one of the most 2009 movies to ever 2009. The soundtrack and references are all very dated. Nick Cage is a bit more fun in the third act, but this is a movie for kids only. Number 16, Kick Donkey. I know that's not the name of the movie, but I don't want YouTube to censor my video for violating the content policy by swearing. This is a really interesting film because it came out in 2010 when the MCU was still in its infancy. Superhero movies weren't multi-billion-dollar hits yet, and we get a superhero movie that even today, 15 years later, is still pretty unconventional. The superheroes are still very unhero-like. There's a lot of cursing and graphic violence, vulgar humor, and this was 6 years before the first Deadpool movie. So in a way, this sort of was the jumping-off point for the Deadpool films. I thought this movie was fun with its meta humor, its snarky commentary on superheroes, and looking at Nick Cage in this movie, yeah, he's over the top, but in this film it works. But the one rather big issue I have, besides all the raunchiness of the film, is that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the character who's around 10 or 11 years old, killing people in these insane graphic ways. And on top of that, there's a joke about how a teen boy is going to wait for her. Again, ugh. Maybe age up Chloe Grace Moretz's character a bit more and it could have been better. Number 15, World Trade Center. This is a drama that has a lot of emotion to it, but I do think this film would have worked better as an anthology because it feels like it jumps around a bit too much with the different characters and plot lines. Nick Cage gives a pretty grounded performance, and he's not as over the top in this movie. Number 14, Color Out of Space. One of the most bizarre and disturbing films I've ever seen, but kind of in a good way. This is a movie that is going to stick with me for a long time because it is so out there. It has a lot of imagery that's disturbing, but also creative at the same time. Nick Cage really goes all out with his Cage rage, and he's a great character who goes on the slow descent into madness. Well done film, but it freaked me out too much to ever want to watch it again. Number 13, Ghost Rider. This wasn't as bad as I was expecting. I don't think Nick Cage was the right choice for the role, since I can't see him as this tough vigilante similar to the Punisher. Like maybe Keanu Reeves or someone else would have been better. Sam Elliott is the best part of this movie. He doesn't care that he's in a cheesy comic book movie. He plays as if he were in a drama. And the aesthetic of the movie is very mid 2000s. The credits, the CGI, the overall style of the film, all very 2000s. I think the villain was pretty cool, and his aesthetic felt kind of like Buffy or Supernatural. That's the comic book-esque cheesy one-liners they found kind of entertaining. Now, there are a couple of issues with the plot. They say early on that demons can't enter hollow ground, but right before the third act, the villain is able to enter hollow ground and he kills a priest. The main character also accepts his role rather quickly. He doesn't really go on a journey to accept who he is, he just kind of accepts it. So by the end, when he vows to stay Ghost Rider, it doesn't feel that impactful because he never really had a problem with it in the first place. Overall, though, I found this entertaining and fun. Number 12, The Wicker Man. I chose this movie where the only thing I knew about it was that Nick Cage wears a bear suit and the infamous Not the Bees meme. And apparently, the Not the Bees scene is in the extended cut, and the version we rented is the theatrical, so I didn't get to see Cage in his bee-fearing glory. But I still thought this was a well-done, slow-burn horror mystery, reminiscent of M. Night Shyamalan's film The Village. It had a lot of great psychological horror, and I'm glad I watched it, even if it didn't have the bee meme scene. Number 11, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. It's Nick Cage literally playing himself with a self aware story with a lot of meta humor, and I really dug it. It's a great mixture of drama, comedy, action, and self-deprecation. Number 10, Raising Arizona. This is arguably Nick Cage's funniest movie, as it's basically a live-action cartoon with a ridiculous plot. He works well on screen with Holly Hunter. The film is quotable, it's wacky, it's a great time. Number 9, The Rock. Yeah, this movie's pretty awesome, if not a bit all over the place. It's probably that it does feel like two different movies, but it's still a pretty fun movie with great performances all around. This is a Michael Bay movie, so of course it's over the top with lots of logic-defying explosions and cheesy one-liners. Silly, but it's fun. Number 8, The Ant Bully. As far as animated films about ants go, this is still better than Bug's Life for Ants. The film has a good message, some nice little jokes, and is great for all ages. Number 7, Pig. A slow burn drama that's basically John Wick without the action. It feels less like a film and more of a play and a character study, and I find this a very artsy film. Number 6, Into the Spiderverse. Of course, this has become one of the most iconic animated films ever. We're still desperately waiting for part 3 as of me making this video in 2025. It's fantastic, and I have nothing bad to say about it. But it's not number 1 simply because Nick Cage isn't a main character. He doesn't show up until about halfway through, but he is still very funny in this movie. If I were judging the movie basically based on how it is without the Nick Cage, without like reviewing it with Nick Cage in it, it would be number 1 for sure. But there are movies where the Nick Cage's role is better. Number 5, Con Air. You can tell that Suicide Squad took a lot of inspiration from this. Character introductions are beat for beat from that movie. It does have a great cast and great characters, with Nick Cage giving a fun performance, and Steve Buscemi being really creepy. The film has a very 90s soundtrack. It goes over the top and almost feels like a parody at points, but that's also part of the charm. Number 4, Season of the Witch. I know a lot of people really hate this movie, but I had fun with it. It has well-directed action, a great quest story, but it doesn't really know if it wants to be horror or action, so there are a few tone issues, but I still had a great time with it. Number 3, Lord of War. I really enjoyed the story about the downfall of an unlikable character. It serves as a great cautionary tale about thirst for power and fame. The main character is essentially a real-life version of Tony Stark without the Iron Suit. They did find Cage's narration throughout the movie very flat and bored, but I still enjoyed the film. Number 2, Matchstick Men. One of Cage's best roles. He's not super over the top and is pretty grounded. He's an interesting character and has a great dynamic with the actress who plays his daughter. This film is a nice mix between drama and action. It has a very sweet story, topping out a great twist and fantastic villain. And my number 1 pick out of these movies is Longlegs. Nick Cage is fantastic in this movie. He is completely unrecognizable as he disappears into the role of the serial killer. He is scarily awesome in this movie. The film also has an intriguing mystery, a bit of a sci-fi fantasy vibe towards the end, and a great twist. It's Cage's best role out of movies on this list, and it comes in at number 1. Going to share a few of these movies and maybe include a few of your favorite Nick Cage movies. What's your favorite Nick Cage role? Let me know, and I'll see you next time.